I'm building a Firebird style guitar, and having spent a few weeks doing some very fine intricate work on the headstock, it's now time to go down the other end of the guitar and do some fine intricate work on the body. Okay, so in the last episode we got the headstock veneer all glued on, so that's pretty much done. There's a little bit of tidying up work to do there, a little bit of cleaning up, but for all intents and purposes we can leave that alone. And with that done, you might think now would be a good time to get the fretboard glued on. However, there is an issue with that in so much as I don't yet have the pickups. And as you can see here, the neck pickup sits pretty much flush against the end of the fretboard. So if I were to put the fretboard on, it would make the job of routing for that pickup much more difficult. So we can't do that for the time being. On the subject of the pickups, I've got some exciting news. I'm actually having a set of custom wound pickups made for this guitar, and I've just heard from Bob, who's making them for me, and they're in the post. So they're on the way. They're actually coming from the Netherlands, so they might take a little bit of time to get here, but I'm prepared to wait because I think they're going to be absolutely awesome. I've never had custom wound pickups made for me before, so I'm really excited about that. But obviously until they get here, we can't do that job, which means we can't do that job. So we need to put that to one side and think of something else to do. And one job that does need doing is we need to get back to this control cavity route, and we need to drill for the controls that are going to go in there. And we also need to do something about a control cavity cover. So I'm going to tackle the controls first, and to do that I'm going to need to look at the drawing. And what the drawing shows is that the centres for the pot shafts are kind of centred on these cutouts that we originally drilled to form the template. And that actually makes the location of them very, very easy, because all I have to do is find the right size Forstner bit that I drilled these contours out with in the first place, and then I can use that as kind of an oversized transfer punch to find the center point of where I need to drill for the controls. And what I found is it's actually a 28mm Forstner bit that I used in the first place. So all I'm going to do is slide that down and use the brad point of that to make a little indentation into all 5 of the locations that I need. And then I'm going to drill a small hole all the way through from the back to transfer those marks onto the front face. And for that I'll use a 3mm bit. And I'm just going to place a piece of scrap wood underneath that, just to stop it tearing out on the front. And to make double sure of that, I've gone halfway through, and now I'm just going to reverse the drill. And go through backwards. And then to open these out, I'm just going to use a step drill. These are absolutely brilliant for jobs like this. Really do avoid the risk of tearing out. I'll take these to 6mm, even though they are slightly bigger. And then I'm just going to open these out with standard drill bits, going at 0.5mm increments. So I'm going to start with a 7.5 here. And then I'm just going to open that out to 8 for the pots. And then just going to put a very slight chamfer on them. And I tend to do that on all the holes that I drill, especially where it's going to be finished, because that chamfer will help me break the edge so I'm not getting a sharp transition on the finish, which will easily burn off And what that means is I can sand this flush and level and not really have to worry about breaking through on the edges of these holes. And there we have all the control mounting holes drilled through without any drama whatsoever. So next up, we need to get this turned over and start thinking about what we're going to do for a control cavity cover. Now, I would imagine that the cover on a standard Gibson model would be some kind of black plastic, which is a perfectly viable way of doing it, but I don't think I'm going to on this one, because we've kind of developed a theme with the headstock and the fretboard, so I'm going to carry on with that. And I'm going to use this offcut of wenge, which is handily just about the right size, to cut this cover out of. Now, obviously, I've gone down about 2mm with this recess. If I cut this down to 2mm, experience from the headstock veneer tells me that it will be way too thin and way too fragile for this job. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this down to about 4 or 5mm, and hopefully that will be robust enough for this application. The other problem, of course, with that is that I'm going to have to recut this recessed section. And now that I've got the wings glued onto the body, that means my template's not going to fit anymore. So I'm going to have to adapt the template to fit, but that shouldn't be too much of an issue. But the first thing I need to do is get this thinned down to the right size on the bandsaw, get it cleaned up a little bit, and then we can start to think about cutting the actual cover out before we worry about locating the template. Right, to the bandsaw. Okay, so that's the cover plate fitted. Might need a little bit of cleaning up, but I'm going to wait until after I've routed this deeper, because we need to go in a little bit further now. And from the measurements I've taken, we need to go in about another 3.5mm. The difference is a little bit deeper than that, but I'm going to go in the 3.5mm, which should leave this a little bit proud, and then I can just sand this and kind of relieve it that way to get it to an exact perfect fit. And to route this, I've just kind of adapted the original template a little bit by trimming this edge off so that it now fits up against this raised section of the body. And then I've slimmed this portion that I cut off down a little bit, so it's roughly the same thickness, so I'm not having the router kind of tip all over the place off this tiny little thin edge. So I'll get this fastened on with some super glue and masking tape, and we can get the router out. Okay, so this is all set up now. Got my templates fastened down. I've set the router up with a small pattern bit, and that is protruding exactly 18.5mm from the base. And I've set it up with this little router jig thingy from Trend. Really good bit of cheap kit that will transform your routing. That's enabled me to set this up to exactly 18.5mm depth of cut, which is what we need. So realistically, I just need to go around this in one pass and just take out that extra material. And that fits really nicely, very happy with that. And I actually think that does look loads better than just a little bit of black plastic. Okay, so I've done a little bit of work fettling that up, and there is a kind of a nice even little gap now all the way around that. Still needs a little bit of cleaning up. It's pretty flush, but it just does need a little bit of fine tuning, especially on this edge. Could do going down just a little bit. But all in all, I'm really happy with that, and I'm sure once it's properly positioned, it'll look great. Now, some of you might be wondering how I'm going to actually fasten this in place. I know that you see people using magnets quite a lot to hold this kind of wooden control cavity cover in place. I'm not going to do that on this occasion. These are going to be totally passive controls. There's no real reason to go delving about in the control cavity on a regular basis. Potentially, it could be years before anyone needs to take this off. So I'm going to just use some screws. But I'm going to use black screws so they'll not stand out too much against this dark coloured wood. I think it'll look absolutely fine, and it'll be just that little bit more bomb proof. I haven't actually got any black screws. I'm going to have to get some on order, so I'm not going to drill any holes or anything until I've got the screws, so I know I'm drilling the right sized holes. So we're pretty much done with this little element of the build now. It might not seem like a huge amount of work, but it's all steps in the right direction. Now, while I've been doing this, a load of hardware's turned up. I'm expecting the pickups at some point fairly soon, so there's plenty of jobs we can be getting on with, but that's all going to be for the next episode. I'm going to leave this one here. So as always, don't forget to drop me a comment, even if it is just to say hi. Don't forget to like, subscribe, all the usual stuff, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.